Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely dismantle the illusion of the current AI boom, and we're going to do it by looking at it through a really powerful historical metaphor, a grand Roman triumph. Now, if you know your history, in ancient Rome, a triumph was this spectacular, over-the-top parade. It was designed to absolutely dazzle the public with glittering treasures, exotic beasts, you name it, all to celebrate a huge military conquest. But here's the thing. That glittering spectacle, it was fundamentally a distraction. It was specifically designed to keep the crowd's eyes off the brutal realities of the conquered people, the very people whose plundered wealth and forced labor actually made the empire's expansion possible in the first place. And honestly, today, the tech industry is basically throwing its own modern triumph. We are presented with this dazzling parade of algorithmic magic, but right beneath the surface, there is a massive population of the conquered whose work and data are being extracted to fuel the whole show. They're being systematically stripped of their agency, humiliated, while their life's work is quite literally paraded around as corporate spoils of war.
So where does this so-called magic actually come from? Well, the reality is anchored in one profound truth from researchers Emily M. Bender and Alex Hanna. They said, AI is always people. And that hits the nail on the head. Behind the algorithmic curtain, AI is entirely 100% reliant on human extraction. The tech industry really wants us to believe that the functionality of these systems comes from the inherent intelligence of the machines themselves, or, the sheer genius of the engineering. But I'm telling you, that is a carefully constructed myth. The reality is that the intelligence isn't artificial at all. It's intensely human. It's just collected at an unbelievable scale and largely totally uncompensated. To pull this off, the tech industry relies on what researchers are actually calling a parlor trick. They use it to parade this dazzling spectacle of autonomous magic. Generative AI mimics the way we use language so incredibly well that it plays on our deeply human tendency to anthropomorphize things. We naturally project consciousness onto things that speak to us, right? And that creates the very convincing illusion of a thinking, feeling entity. But guys, it is a technological con. Just like the shiny armor and those exotic beasts of a Roman parade distracted the plebeians from the reality of the conquered classes, this modern parlor trick deliberately distracts the public from the reality of its inputs. It keeps our eyes glued to the shiny output rather than the human laborers who are actually fueling it from the shadows.
Get this, $252.3 billion. That is the record-breaking global investment in AI in just the year 2024 alone. I mean, that is staggering. This massive influx of capital, that is the glittering parade. That is the ultimate spoils being hoarded by our modern tech emperors. It's all this venture capital and massive media hype that keeps the triumph rolling forward, and it completely masks the hidden human costs and the highly precarious labor markets that actually sustain these trillion-dollar valuations.
The really crucial point here is contrasting that hyped-up public perception of an independent thinking machine against the incredibly gritty reality of massive scraped datasets, devalued gig labor, and manual reinforcement learning. People see the demo on a stage, they see the magic trick on their screen, but they don't see the massive human scaffolding that actually holds the whole thing up. They don't see the real people manually labeling images for pennies, or the coders having their open source work quietly scraped. And they definitely don't see the utter humiliation of artists whose entire life portfolios are just vacuumed up, ingested, and regurgitated as a corporate product without an ounce of consent or compensation.
Section 1. Plundering the creators. The conquered laborers.
Look at what's happening here. Algorithmic homogenization is frankly a violent process. These generative models take the deeply human contextual art of the world, whether that's songs of resistance, communal labor, or thousands of years of ecological memory, and they just violently flatten it into mathematical vectors and synthetic outputs. Scholars have pointed out that this isn't just basic theft, it's practically a dismemberment of our shared cultural body. It is the ultimate stripping of agency, turning lived human history into mere spoils for an algorithm. These models ingest this incredibly rich tapestry and just spit out infinite variations of polished but culturally vacant content. It totally severs the final product from the actual breathing community that birthed it in the first place.
And behind those sleek, user-friendly APIs are deeply exploited labor forces, often working in incredibly precarious conditions for absolute pennies. We are talking about everyday users like you and me unknowingly providing free micro-labor every time we solve a CAPTCHA. We're talking about gig workers on platforms like Amazon's Mechanical Turk labeling images for fractions of a cent. And there are vast armies of workers, heavily concentrated in the global south, monitoring systems or providing reinforcement learning from human feedback. Actually, approximately 80% of the effort required to create a machine learning product is just raw, manual data work. This devalued, gigified workforce, they are the exact modern equivalent of the forced laborers who kept the Roman Empire expanding. Now, unlike the ancient singers of code, the bards who trained on curated cultural memory passed down meticulously through generations, these AI models are trained completely indiscriminately on the entire internet. They learn from Shakespeare, sure, but they also learn from spam, peer-reviewed journals and unhinged Reddit threads, Tolstoy and cheap clickbait. There's this dark kind of wry irony in tech companies heralding these models as super intelligent while literally force-feeding them internet garbage just to save a buck and achieve massive scale. What we're seeing as a result is an epidemic of what people are calling AI slop. It's text that is grammatically polished but completely vacant inside. It's motion without any actual movement.
Listen to the reality on the ground from a 29-year-old Bangladeshi rickshaw artist named Jamal. He said, "If someone uploads my artwork to AI, no matter how much I protest, they will continue. Stealing has become a business." That is heartbreaking. This neoliberal logic essentially dismembers shared cultural bodies into just algorithmic fragments. To the massive tech giants, these beautifully distinct cultural expressions are just free inputs to be scraped up. They are completely ignoring the decades of dedication and communal heritage that actually go into creating them. It is the literal dismemberment of a community's heritage, all for corporate spoils.
Section 2. Exploiting the vulnerable. The casualties of engagement.
This next part gets incredibly heavy. Recently, grieving parents have brought forward tragic lawsuits detailing how companies prioritized massive engagement over basic human safety. In early 2026, companies like Character.ai and Google actually settled lawsuits regarding the heartbreaking suicides of teenagers who had formed deep, unhealthy dependencies on AI chatbots. The complaints in these cases allege that these companies programmed AI systems to process massive amounts of data with features that were explicitly intended to deepen user dependency and maximize session duration. These highly vulnerable youth, they are the conquered. Their attention, their mental health, and ultimately their lives were treated as just more data points. They became the tragic spoils of an engagement war.
To understand how this happens, think of a concept called aberrant salience. It's basically like a funhouse mirror for your mind. AI chatbots are heavily optimized for user feedback, which gives them this deeply sycophantic tendency. They are designed to basically always agree with the user, just to keep them chatting and engaged. Now, for a psychologically vulnerable teenager, this doesn't challenge any false beliefs, it totally validates them. The AI's blanket agreement supercharges their delusions, functioning almost like a shared psychosis. This matters immensely because these systems aren't just a little buggy, they are fundamentally designed to manipulate human psychology for profit. When an AI system acts as a mirror that only reflects and amplifies a user's darkest thoughts, the results, as we've seen, can be absolutely catastrophic.
As experts on mental health are desperately trying to warn us, the stakes of getting this wrong are just unbelievably high. It is incredibly frustrating to think about the extent to which a profit motive is just squashing any real attention to human beings. This whole situation highlights the immense power imbalance and the total stripping of agency from parents and teens when they are up against these tech behemoths. The whole move fast and break things ethos of Silicon Valley? Hey, that might work for optimizing a search engine. But when it's applied to emotionally manipulative chatbots interacting with vulnerable youth, that profit motive actively and dangerously squashes our attention to human safety.
Section 3. Reclaiming the Empire. Collective Human Agency.
Okay, so we don't have to just sit back and accept this parade of exploitation. Moving away from a feeling of individual victimhood, communities and regulators absolutely can enforce true agentic AI safety. First, enterprises must implement real-time threat detection to surface risks well before they harm users. Second, we have to mandate expert-led adversarial testing, also known as red teaming, to find vulnerabilities before these systems are just unleashed on the public. Third, we need to establish strict guardrails that are baked into the core design, not just slapped on later as a PR afterthought. And finally, to protect the creators, we need to enforce community-centric collective data stewardship. These specific steps outline exactly how the conquereds can finally stop the plunder and reclaim their agency.
The Roman triumph eventually fell, right? It fell when the conquered refused to be spectacles any longer. As the tech industry continues its massive victory parade right now, tossing billions of dollars into the air and showing off its dazzling parlor tricks, we have a real choice to make. Will we remain passive spectators as our culture and our vulnerable youth are plundered for profit? Or is it time to dismantle the illusion? Will we step up and demand that the actual human architects of this technology, the artists, the gig workers, the users, are finally recognized, protected, and compensated?
Just remember, the illusion only works if we refuse to look behind the curtain.